Good morning, everybody. Nice day. Humidity's down.
Hello?
Yes.
Cold.
Cinder? Hi.
Hi, Cinder.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
We look like we're all doing fine this morning.
Yeah.
So what we have in front of us are the assumptions and the charts. And my understanding is that... Go ahead.
I just want to pull up my assumptions while you're talking. While I have them.
Okay. So the assumptions are, I don't know that there have been any changes. The assumptions are the general fund capital requests that are going to go out for bond, and then the enterprise funds, which the enterprise funds is basically finishing up the work that we had started at the beginning, and we got almost all the way through, except we didn't get to the enterprise funds before annual town meeting. So this is kind of hopefully the end of the capital programs committee work for 2013.
Okay. Do you have, might you want to make more changes between now and the board document presentation?
Well, it depends on the outcome of this meeting if we have additional questions, but I don't know of any at the moment.
Okay.
So do you want to just go ahead?
Well, I was going to say, I'm not quite sure from what I saw yesterday, I'm not quite sure how long ago committee members have been given a copy of the PowerPoint chart. And we were hoping to get your feedback this morning because we're happy to do whatever you want us to do with that. And we're happy to continue to make our own, I mean, I think what it doesn't do yet is to speak to what it's showing. And so we want to have that conversation with you before we put any charts together potentially that will speak to that.
All right. Well, let me speak for the committee for just a second. I think one of the things that this shows was number one, the impact of on the tax rate was a lot more than we thought it was going to be from the prior charts. And secondly, we don't see the impact of any general enterprise fund needs from the general fund, and how that would only serve to increase the impact on the tax rate as well. So those are two things that I think.
Can you make your second point? Can you make your second point again? It's not clear to me what you're saying.
Well, there's a couple of enterprise funds that will probably impact the general fund, or the tax rate, I should say. One would be our island home, and the other would be the sewer, water. What's the other one, John?
Well, the
Sewer, wouldn't it be?
it's solid waste, which is any fund, any enterprise fund that's presently being subsidized through the general fund.
Right.
I would assume that any large capital that they have to do is going to have to be, it's going to impact the tax rate.
I don't think you should assume that.
No?
At the moment. I think the assumptions we should make, though, right, and this can, obviously this will change as we go forward. Solid waste, I think.
That is very up to you. That's you, Libby.
It is, Libby. Is there a...
I'll just.
Okay. Is this the only...
Yeah. Cinder, I'm come closer to the phone. I was just saying that I think the solid waste enterprise fund, we don't know yet, but we think it will probably be able to pay for its debt out of it. Its operations are funded through the general fund, but I think the capital can probably be paid for through it. Sewer, though, and island home are unlikely to be able to pay all of their debt reasonably out of their operating budget. So there will need to be some general fund subsidy, but we haven't worked that in here yet because we're trying to just get the plan going. So I think to your point, John, that will get worked in, but we also don't have some of the information that we're going to need on sewer, for example.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll just come back later.
Do you want to walk through each one of these charts and talk about them?
I got a question.
John has a follow-up question.
One of the things about the property tax is that you do have some, I need to correct me if I'm wrong, some of the sewer debt has been put on the debt exclusion in order probably for people to, use the tax as a deduction on tax returns. Is that not right? Yes, I agree with that.
She's asking Lisa a
So
question.
that's one reason why your property tax looks, I'd like to kind of explore that first comment you said, that the impact on the tax rate is higher than you thought.
Yeah, I think what I'd like, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of breeze through these charts so we all are on the same page. I think we've seen the first ones before, which are the general fund. The difference is they go back to 2010, which shows debt service going back to 2010, existing, and then it shows with the 10-year plan that we presented to the FinCom and to the Board of Selectmen. It shows going back to 2010, which we hadn't done before, and that shows that the 2 years, 2017 and 2018, are not that far out of line with what it was in the past. So there's two big years, but the following years are roughly the equivalent of 2010, 2011, 2012. So that would be one thing, which I think is an important thing to notice. I know Bruce Miller was very interested in that, seeing that graph. Okay.
One of the things about that graph, real quick, is that all of these assume bonds issued right when you need to start the project.
Right.
This is really a starting point to consider how the town feels about what it's seeing here. When you look at 17 and 18, that's clearly what's showing up here, and we probably could, by using bands on anticipation notes, so you only pay interest and don't do that principal, we could maybe do something about that.
Okay, noted. So it may not be that high because of the way, we're just trying to get a process started here. Got it?
Correct. This is just the beginning stage to look at what, if you sold bonds for everything that's on the capital plan in the years where you're talking about, how it would impact. But then it's the question of developing a financing plan that might suit the town. I mean, when you look at 17 and 18, you might say, well, we're going to have some excess revenue surpluses in the town, so we could just appropriate some of that cash to offset that. Or you might have some other ability to do something to deal with, to mitigate that right there.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So that's
What this first chart also shows is that the non-exempt tax supported debt service, it looks like they're green instead of blue. Really essentially is nominal.
right. Yeah, barely shows up.
Almost everything is exempt debt service. It is as it relates to the general fund. So that's one thing that the town has clearly moved to. That almost everything you do, if it's of any consequence, is going to be a tax. There's going to be a debt exclusion.
John, do you have a question?
Yes. This is a generalized question. I thought the data you presented was pretty self-explanatory, and I think an excellent source, excellent data from my perspective anyway. Is there anything about the data that, I look at it and say, this is what it is, very straightforward. Is there anything about it that we should know that's maybe not quite as it appears?
No, it's not. There's nothing that's not quite as it appears. I think that what we need to do between now and the presentation to the Board of Selectmen is take a look at how it might relate to policy decisions and the town's credit and those kinds of implications.
Right. Yeah. I wasn't thinking of that, I was just thinking of the data itself. But as far as you're concerned, the data that we're looking at, there's nothing about it that we should know that's unusual.
No,
Okay.
not really.
All right.
Well, I think I think, Cinder, what you pointed out is important for me to point out to the Board of Selectmen, and that is that the way this model appears is that, you know, if we're going to build a fire station in 2017, we borrow the total amount in 2017, whereas we probably wouldn't do it quite that way. So,
We could push a lot of this out. The only reason you would do things sooner than later is if, in fact, you know, we're still in this low rate environment, and you really feel if you want to take advantage of interest rates, because you know that would save you a lot more money than worrying about the impact.
got it. Okay. Thank you.
I mean, I think when you look at the dollar amount of the impact, and I want to see where that is, I think it was that was back on the model, and I think I must have that working in the office. Yeah, but the dollar consequence was really relatively nominal.
There's about $200 plus on a $1.3 million house, if I recall.
Well, that doesn't seem like a lot to me for all of that together.
Right. I agree.
And that's at the peak.
That's at the peak, right.
But I mean, maybe for me to say, you know, but at the same time, that, you know, I just doesn't seem like that. You know, we probably can deal with that.
Right. I'm looking back.
Probably not with a different bond structure, but probably with using notes instead of bonds, if in fact those still a couple of years are concerned.
Right. I was trying to find the chart that is in here and is way toward the end. It's called the Town of Nantucket Existing and Projected General Fund Tax Supported Debt Service 2010-24. Well, it's 20. The chart showed 2014 up, and you've got it broken out by residential tax rate impact, open space tax rate impact, and commercial, industrial, personal property tax rate impact. Since we're talking about that subject, could you jump to that chart? Has everybody found that? 'Cause I think that's really.
Yeah, and I apologize. The next time you see this thing, we'll have page numbers on it.
Thank you. It's like 4 or 5 from the back.
Yeah.
I'm looking for.
Oh, this is back up.
Looks like this for those in the audience.
Yeah.
Lisa, do you see that? Is this in the order of what was impact was yesterday?
I think it's page 5 of the PowerPoint.
That's the,
Okay, thanks.
that's the
Okay,
surrounding
so we're looking at the tax impact for 100,000 in assessed value?
Yes, that's right.
And then the resident connected general tax rate, that's rate of tax 24, is that something you have?
here.
Or page before that?
I think, yes. You've shown 2 examples. You've shown the impact on a $500,000 single-family home and the impact of a $1.3 million single-family home. And so in 2014, the model would have it be in 2014, it would be for the $500,000 be $200, and on a 1.3, it would be $525. So that's quite a bit more than what we had before, and that was kind of what.
So that's, well, you're already at that, but this includes existing tax debt exclusion, so it's not just the addition, it's the existing.
Yeah, I understand.
So in 2014, this is already a done deal, this is already where it's at.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's absorbed in the
So
current
in
tax rate.
2017, that's where you see it bumping
The
up,
differential
but
is-
it's bumping up to.
Oh, got it, okay.
In 2019, that's already where it was back in 2010 or whatever the year was that we first looked at this, 2010.
I'm relieved, thank you.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
The one on the left shows residential versus commercial and industrial because of the weighting of the different tax rates.
Uh-huh.
So this is this actually is a pretty good, the chart on the right,
Yeah.
the green and purple chart, I think it's pretty illustrative. It's illustrating the same thing as what you saw
Okay,
on the first page.
all right, very good.
In terms of tax impact.
All right. So this is the general fund, just restated and more clear, but it does not include the enterprise funds yet. Any impact. And as Libya was saying, we didn't want to do that just yet. So right now, we're back to, can we just continue with that through those charts,
Can I just?
John?
Yeah. What might be interesting on this chart that we're talking about, an excellent chart, by the way, is to go back to 2010, to have a chart showing going back to 2010, 11, 12, and so forth, because I think that starts to tell a story as well. It tells a story that, in my view, that the tax rate, the base rate was higher in those years, and then it dropped down, and it's coming, and then it's coming back. So I think that kind of gives us a little bit more of a historical perspective. So if there's anything, I'd make a recommendation that chart go back a little bit further than to 2014.
Is it,
Can you tell me what that value we used here?
In 2014, it says value.
So if we go back to 2010, and we use in 2000, so you use 2014 for the value, and what you do in 15? It's growth or it's fixed?
so,
I'll have to check. I think I may have grown it by 2.5%, but let me get back to you and check that.
You just need to double check that our assumption is about that value and how it's growing. Because obviously, if we go back to 2010, we want to use the 2010 assessed value, and I just want to see how it jives with blending into this chart. So we'll double check that, but we
That's a
could
good point.
Go back and do that.
thank you. I think it also continues what you had done in the beginning charts about going back to 2010. So it's really a continuation of that, which tells that story better, probably.
Actually, it assumes no growth in the assessed value.
So that's an important thing to discuss for a second. On this particular chart, it's showing no growth in assessed value, but we're using the 2014 assessed value to consider tax impact. If we showed growth in assessed value, we haven't, because I don't know that that's a good thing to start doing in any of these charts.
I thought we did.
Change the impact.
Yeah.
Debbie, didn't we talk about that, the growth in assessed value? Didn't we talk about?
I thought that Lisa and Cindy were using an assumption.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I did too. I thought it was built in there. I know,
We could show it like this and then show what it looks like with some growth in assessed value if you want to. Because I think we're going to show two different things, and everybody's going to go into, what is your assumption?
Well,
We get into the assumption.
didn't we? I don't know. What was the assumption, Deb? Do you recall? Is the growth in this?
Cindy is about 3% the growth, 2.5%. Cindy, do you have actuals for fiscal 14?
Cinder, do you have actual? Sorry.
You know, the assessed value, just take a look, I don't know, I don't know, I mean, assessed value has just been, it's come down some, so I think we just kept it constant at the FY 14, we didn't take an assumption about growth. Because the assessed value had, come down with the recession. So we're just using what it is and not making an assumption about growth in the future. We've shown this kind of a chart two different ways. And a lot of times we don't show growth, and other times we do. It's really up to, we can do it the other way also, and you can see how it suits your purposes. Or it's just plain suits your interest in more information.
Cinder, hold on, I got a bunch of hands here. Libby,
I just was going to say, number one, it's very hard to hear you, Cinder. Number two,
Okay.
it would be a good idea to show some assumptions. I am drawing a blank on what we assumed or did not assume for new growth. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
So if it's not in here, this only gets a little better.
yes,
Well,
right.
better if it's not in there yet.
Right.
But it might be helpful.
Yeah, it was less of an impact if in fact we showed growth.
Right.
Thank you. John?
Yeah,
So, Lisa, we have to show what our assumptions are,
yes.
and then so that people can, we'll try to show assumptions on any and all of this.
Great.
Okay.
I think, will you talk with Debbie Dilworth about those assumptions?
We can be.
Yeah, are you getting there right now?
Yes, she is.
Well, we don't have to do it.
I mean,
We don't do it now. We don't do it now, but I mean, pardon me? Say that again?
Do you want us to assume 2.5% growth in the assessed value at this point going forward?
Why don't we email and discuss the assumptions?
She would like to email and discuss the assumptions with you.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay? John?
Yeah, Libby, you've done a projection in the past for the Board of Selectmen, a fairly simple projection of revenue and so forth. And you've been pretty consistent about the assumptions you've used in that projection.
Yeah.
And I assume, therefore, you've really thought about them and you're okay with them. It would be nice if this had some continuity to that as well, because people are used to, I know I'm used to looking at that and those assumptions, and that's, I think the assumptions that you use in that projection that you give probably should be the same as what we use here, simply for the purpose of making sure we're looking at apples and apples.
Yeah.
And that would be a suggestion I'd have on that. Yeah, good.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
We did prepare, in addition to this PowerPoint, we prepared a couple of debt models, and I really think that that's important to show for a second, because as nice as charts are, I think it's also very nice to be able to see the debt model and see what the actual numbers are and get a better sense of it. I actually get a better sense of it from that too.
In terms of the PowerPoint, I agree with you that we should have the assumptions up front so that when you get to the charts, we all know what we're charting. So I think that's very important that those be clear as to what the assumptions are, what are the capital projects, and what are the assumptions in terms of growth and et cetera, et cetera. So I agree with you, Cinder.
Well, I think that's why the debt model, I think, comes into play, but we can include the actual assumptions chart as well.
Good.
Assumption charts, and then put the assumptions on each page that relate to a particular chart, so that whether or not there is or isn't an assumption about growth.
Thank you. That would be
or interest
fantastic.
rates and interest rates. If
Okay.
you go back to the debt model, you'll see that those have the assumptions on borrowing rates and things like that right on the cover page. These are just the charts, but we can make it a little more user friendly.
Thank you. I think it would be easier for all of us to understand. Any other questions from the committee at this point, or should we continue with the enterprise funds? I think we'd like to just continue with those charts. So the next chart, well, they're back to, is the Airport Enterprise Fund. Would you like to take us through that, and then you just take us through each of the enterprise funds subsequent to that as well? See if there's any explanations here.
So the that airport emphasis on the first term is existing and projected debt service from 14 to 24. The yellow is the existing, and the orange is the projection.
Right, okay?
I think that's fairly self-explanatory. I mean, we know that we know what's in it, but we don't right here, but we do know what's in it. It reflects the capital plan as most recently revised by the capital planning committee. On the next page, the chart on the left, now here too, these are the projection of the airport operating budget. That grows by a certain percent.
Yes, that grows by 2.5%.
So we will reflect that right on it's growing at 2.5%. And it shows the existing and projected debt service compared to the budget. And then on the far right, on that same page, it shows it in a graph form as a percent.
Perfect.
So,
It's a great chart.
yeah.
John has a question.
So that's fairly,
It's not so much a question as I'm assuming that that for each of the enterprise funds, we need to see the assumptions listed out as well, because we were just talking about the general fund before, but I think for all of these separately, we need to see the list of assumptions, because they're going to be a little different here and there, depending on the enterprise fund.
I think they're all here.
Okay.
But we've had those in the past. It's that very
Yeah.
small print.
I'm just saying for the purpose of the
Oh, yeah, we
presentation,
need to have them just so that people understand what we're
just
talking
so
about.
everybody understands this is what it's based on.
the biggest assumptions are the capital plan as laid out in terms of need
Right.
and amounts
Yep.
and timing. And then the other assumptions are the growth in the operating budget as well as the borrowing rate. And then it's going bonds right out the gate. But I think if we don't just rely on this part of the PowerPoint, but the debt models become part of the PowerPoint, and all the assumptions become part of the PowerPoint, then I think it would all come together in a very visible way.
Could you, I'm sorry, I'm dense, but could you explain what the debt model is? Is it different than what we've been looking at, Cinder?
What we've got here is a PowerPoint that reflects charts and graphs of the proposed debt and showing it in different ways. The debt model itself is a single document that is actually comprised of about, we went through it when we came out there, and it's about, and we've got it updated. It reflects, it's probably about 15 or so pages long, and it's got all the detail of everything in a summary page that shows it, but it's all the numbers as opposed to just the charts. It's all the numbers that go with it. And if you look at the backup to the summary page, it shows the detail by each bond issue and the components of each one, so it's very easy to look at that. This is just a chart related to that.
Right. I think we've had that in the past, and I'd be surprised if it isn't in this package. So it's a single page, or 2 or 3 pages of the debt laid out by year. Isn't that correct? Is that what you mean by the debt model?
Yeah, the debt model is right now, I'm just looking at one of them. Let me just take a page that was about, so basically the documents are the capital plan, and then there's the debt model and the assumptions that go into it, which reflects the capital plan, and then there's PowerPoint. And then the other thing I think would be important would be to show existing fiscal policies and how this relates to that. And whether or not fiscal policies need to be revisited.
Well, yeah, I think it's pretty clear that they do when we keep going for the enterprise funds. So good.
A lot of times you develop fiscal policy after you look at all this information. Just so you know, the debt model is 13 pages long, so it is 13 pages showing each existing debt and projected debt by bond issue that reflects the capital plan.
I'll just assume
And
it's
it's
right.
just all the numbers.
Yeah.
This is a picture of all that information.
Terrific. Okay, I got it. So, so the enterprise fund shows that, for the airport, shows 8%, less than 8% in 2014, and then less than 7% in subsequent years. So that's good for us to know. Then the next is the water.
Okay, and just, you know, these are bonds. I mean, for something like the airport, they get a lot of grants in that they're doing capital projects for. They may need to borrow in anticipation of grants. That short-term borrowing is not included in here right now.
Okay,
So we would show that, no short-term borrowing is assumption.
got it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so the next is the water. And the same thing, the water, existing water is yellow and projected as shown to us is orange. And
Right.
it looks fairly, looks fairly constant.
Yeah, now the next chart, which shows it as a percentage of operating budget, sort of jumps out at you that it's, it's like 56% in 2014, and, it's fairly high. So that kind of is a good example of where the 12% guideline doesn't really fit.
This includes both water plants,
Well, that's a percentage, this is supported by the water fee. As opposed to that.
I'm sorry, we couldn't understand what you said?
I was just wanting to confirm that this is water jet in the enterprise fund as opposed to on the tax rate.
Right.
And I
Well,
know
yeah.
This is in the water fund.
Cinder, it kind of goes back to what you were saying about revisiting policy. One of the things we have in our policy is a 12% guideline for debt service to operating budget. And in the enterprise funds, it really, there's a couple other examples here too, that it really doesn't work very well for the enterprise funds.
Well, that's not typically how you would look at a guideline for an enterprise fund.
How would you look at it?
Well, you might look at it as, and I don't know what the retained earnings are obtained in the water enterprise fund, but you might take a look at it as a percent, what amount of, I think you look at it in terms of what are the actual rates, and how do those rates compare? And are those rates reasonable, and how do they compare?
Got it.
Because, you look at it as a percent of the budget on the general fund because the general fund has a lot of competing needs. So, you can't have your debt be 50% of your operating budget. But for water enterprise, it could be as high as what's reasonable and still competitive or not. In your case, there's no competition. In your case, something that's not computable kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding in agreement with you, Cinder. The problem, or not the problem, but the issue is that we right now have a guideline of 12% guideline for the general fund, and then we have a guideline of 12% for combined debt service to operating, and with the enterprise funds, and that's kind of what I was getting at. I think this is sort of revealing that it doesn't really work for the enterprise funds. Deb Weiner has
No,
a...
I'm not quite sure. Where did you come up with the 12% in the first place?
That's a good question.
Some other community.
Maybe another community, I don't know.
Another day.
Deb Weiner has a question?
Well, I wonder if we can ask Cinder to separate the Sconset and the Wanacoma water debt. Sconset doesn't even have an operating budget, so this looks very skewed against Wanacoma water. So maybe she can separate those and do two different charts on them. It would be a
Can
little
you
more.
speak closer to your microphone? Who is that? Is that me?
No, it was Deb Weiner. She was asking if you did two different charts, one for Wanacoma and one for Sconset, because Sconset really doesn't have any debt.
No, Sconset has debt, but they don't have an operating
Do
budget.
we
Oh, it
know-
doesn't have an operating budget,
Do we
sorry.
know the debt for Sconset versus Wanacoma?
Yeah, I'll
I'll have to check and have.
I don't think it
Kelly
really,
confirm it.
I think for purposes of the,
So you're saying Sconset doesn't have any debt?
doesn't have an operating budget. For purpose of the Board of Selectmen presentation, I'm not sure,
I wouldn't go.
yeah, we need to go that.
That's- because it's operated operationally, it's operated as one, that's why they don't have an operating budget. And the issue is, the debt is the debt. I think the way we're doing it now is fine, personally.
Okay, very good. Any other questions about that? Water? Next is solid waste.
Now, solid waste is interesting.
That's what we were just observing. Everybody's smiling. And in this is there's three different major projects that I can think of off the top of my head. Shimo,
No, that's a solid waste.
Nantucket, and
This is solid waste we're talking about.
That's not sewer.
this is not sewer? Oh,
Not sewer.
gosh.
Okay.
Okay.
No, it's
Continue on, I'm mistaken.
building a new cell.
Oh, yeah, got it. Okay. Continue. I'm sorry for the interruption.
That's okay, so we're just looking at, there's only one chart here for solid waste, with two charts on it, with two charts. There's one on, the first one, again, the yellow is existing, the orange is on top of it, what is projected to come on.
And so that's
Now,
mainly for the closing?
We're
of the
assuming it
dump?
would be in the solid waste enterprise fund, so are you telling me that by fiscal 17, you think the enterprise fund can pay its own way and support the solid waste that would be coming on? Did you say that earlier today?
I don't, she's saying, did I say that we could
Let me-
support the solid waste?
So maybe what you said that there's a chance that the capital plan can be paid through the enterprise fund budget in the future?
Possibly.
Possibly. Mr. Chairman, the issue here, really, it's a big item, and it's the capping of the land.
Right, the
the
closing.
Landfill.
Closing,
cells,
yeah.
and that's the big item that's sitting there, the boulder in the road, that's 8 million too, and that, Libby, I don't know how you do it, but I'm not sure that's gonna be possible to.
I'm not sure either.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
saying we haven't really.
Because that hits all at once, you know what I mean? In other words, you either do it or you don't. I mean, you can spread it a little bit, but, and that's what you're seeing here, is that everything's going here, and then all of a sudden you get a big spike, and that's the spike right
Can
there.
I ask you a question on solid waste? Because I know that it's an issue in terms of the enterprise fund versus the general fund and who pays. And how does that translate? Who does pay? If it's in the enterprise fund, who's paying for it? Does it get covered by?
Who's paying for the debt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Would have to.
If there's debt in there right now, I think it's coming out of the,
Is that you?
Well, she's thinking out loud.
Okay. I'd like to hear what she's thinking out loud.
Okay.
it's, the existing debt is paid for out of the solid waste enterprise.
It is paid out of the enterprise fund.
The existing debt.
The existing is. Well, I guess I'm looking at the percentage, and it's fairly low as a percentage of the operating budget,
That's right.
even with the borrowing of 8.2 million.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, eight, but.
who's
eight-
paying? Who's paying?
Who's paying?
Right.
And the question is, can solid waste continue when that boulder hits? Can it fund that? And that's a question that we have to answer. Excuse me, we have to answer that question, but that isn't going to be answered today.
What was the question?
Well, we don't know the answer to the question you're asking. Can the debt service be paid from the operating budget? We'll have to do some work on that and get back to you, Cinder.
So I have a question right now. Whether the solid waste enterprise fund, solid waste is all recorded in it, but the general fund is subsidizing it. Is that right?
For operations.
For operations, not for debt.
Operations. So you think if the general fund has to subsidize the operations, it would have to definitely subsidize additional debt. I would think, but I'm not, I mean, you tell me.
Move on.
I think we need to move on, Cinder.
Yep,
I don't think we have the answers to the question, but we need to get the answers.
yep.
Okay, so we'll get some answers. So then we
Another
go on
day.
to the sewer enterprise fund. Again, existing sewer is in yellow, we do everything existing is in yellow, and the new projected is in orange.
Yes.
And there too, I think what's important to go on to the next page is the percent of the operating budget. It's going up, and so obviously it's going to impact sewer fees. How is this impacting the fees? The same thing with the water, how is it impacting the fees? I think that would be something that Board of Selectmen is going to want to know. How is this impacting fees, and how do you manage the impact on fees?
Yeah.
How much are they willing to have fees go up, and do you want it, here would be a perfect place to consider whether or not you want to use bands to make it nice and easy level or whatever. I think it would be important to urge the Board of Selectmen that this is step one. That I think, as we said when we first came off those, first you have to get to the gut we're at now and evaluating what it's all showing. And then you have to consider what your options are relative to financing it.
Definitely agree. This really reveals that we've got an issue that we need to wrestle with. Spread things out differently, or fund it differently, or raise the fees, or there's any number of things that we're faced with, I think. But this shows it.
One of the things that the sewer chart jumped out at me that shows the opportunity to do is raise fees sooner than you need to, so you're collecting excess, so you don't need to have the impact, so that you can lessen and mitigate where that is going up too high. You know what I'm saying? So there could be a constant. If you raise fees in fiscal 15 and 16 to some extent, or 16 to, if you raised it, you could make it so you don't have to keep raising it throughout, or that it would, you can create some excess sooner and manage this.
Well, that's a good thought. That will be something to take into consideration, I'd say.
Horse is already out of the barn, so the issue is, if you followed the sewer fee increases for the last few years, they've been going up.
Right.
And there's been a lot of squealing about it, so anything in anticipation of this. This obviously shows, we don't need to do a lot of finessing here to know that this is a major problem staring us in the face. If you just take this at face value and run out fees on it, what it's going to show you in the future is the increase in sewer fee. If you thought you've seen some in the past, if we do the things that we're talking about doing, you're going to see some big-time fee increases in the future, if we continue to fund it the way we are presently.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that you want to look at your fees and see how your fees compare off how maybe the collecting shape.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's been done. It's a scary scenario. I think we've been doing that, and it's pretty scary. So I think we can move on though to our island home enterprise fund, which goes from 0 to something.
Yeah. Well, you're already subsidizing the operation, so here you'd be paying for a week.
Yes.
This is just debt, so you'd be taking on the debt. I'm assuming if the operation's being subsidizing, my assumption again is that the debt would be subsidizing.
Yes.
Yes, I'm just looking at the chart. So projected debt service, depends on when we do the building, but that's what this starts, and this is the percentage of operating budget. So in addition to subsidizing operations, we would be subsidizing the debt. And I guess that's a good thing to focus on as to what that amount might be.
Let me make sure.
John?
I assume,
Right.
I assume,
bond.
I assume that this was not incorporated into the debt, into the general fund debt that we looked at earlier. So this is hanging out there, I assume.
Yes, because you've got your own enterprise fund, I think that you created so you could really see what it's costing to operate the island home. but it's not paying its own way unless we need protected objects. And so this is not yet included as a debt exclusion, but I'm assuming that ultimately it would be. And it would be a level impact on top of what we're showing for prospective debt exclusion in the general fund.
I think this particular,
Enterprise fund, but not paying its own way.
I'm going to throw out a suggestion that maybe this is sort of a known as opposed to an unknown that we've been talking about. And I'm wondering if we could do a second chart about the impact on the tax rate, including our island home debt service.
Sure.
Was that possible? Because then we,
Now,
The que-
and what about solid waste?
well, we don't know where we are on solid waste, to be honest. It's such scary things that we haven't wrestled with the solution just yet. But I think the island home is fairly obvious
It's big.
and big, so we need to incorporate that because we don't want to be lying to taxpayers about the impact of this plan. And I think this is one. Go ahead.
And if you decide that you want us to do something about solid waste, showing what that debt exclusion will look like, for the landfill, you can tell us and we'll do it.
Okay, we'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
So the last chart is the combined enterprise fund debt service. So it just shows us a lot.
It's not particularly germane.
No.
That shows what you're facing with all the enterprise fund. I'm not sure.
Yeah, what else it shows? I agree.
That doesn't just show how big.
I'm not sure that it's a great way to look at things, but it does show that, you're facing a lot of infrastructure needs.
Well, that's why we're doing the 10-year plan, to get that out on the table, so that's good. Is there any, say that again?
You could say the cash flows are going to change a lot on these projects as you go forward, and you probably will use yields instead of bonds. So it will change. We can push out the impact.
You said, what'd you say instead of bonds?
I said the cash flow, the actual cash flow needs will change a lot with all of this proposed debt. And that will keep, and we can also push out a lot of this with the use of bands if that,
Bands.
if the town wants to. It will change the assumptions about borrowing rates to some extent possibly. And that's going to change anyway as you go forward. This will always get big.
Right. Have you seen any increase in bond rates lately?
No, they've been declining since January. They're at great rates.
So, time to borrow. Okay. I'm looking.
One of the things about this, I think it's important to remember, is what all it's showing you, so that you can develop policy around it, and so that you can decide what looks, and then next look at actually, look at what your options are for financing.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is great work, and we thank you very, very much. And I'm looking at the department heads out here in the audience, and I thank them very much for getting this information to the committee, because otherwise we would have nothing to work with and no plan, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all working well together, and I thank everybody for doing that. I know it wasn't easy. Do you have any final remarks, Cinder, other than that last one?
No, but it would be helpful for us to, you may have sent it to us, but if you've got it in one place, for us to, if you could send us your fiscal policy so we could take a look at that again and compare it with this, so we can maybe talk with Debbie or Libby about that in advance of coming out there, and then we will change this in the next, the next couple of days. We'll change this and put page numbers and show assumptions and show you more of what it could look like for purposes of the presentation with the board selection. So I know we need to have a little more conversations. I'll probably get with Libby and
I agree, and then they can send any updates to the committee for questions. Would that be okay? Instead of having another meeting, because I think
Well, yeah.
we'll see.
Questions from the audience?
Questions from the audience? Bruce Miller?
So I'm very concerned that along the way we seem to have, I think, lost sight of what I thought was one of the main purposes of the exercise. And we started out having determined, I think.
Can you, Bruce, could you come
Yeah,
closer?
okay. I think we've lost, at least in my mind, we've lost sight of one of the purposes of the exercise. I mean, we started out realizing that for some period of time the community had been supporting about $9 million a year in annual debt service. And we knew we were going to be paying that down fairly significantly. So we said, okay, how much of our wish list could we accomplish if we simply continued to spend $9 million a year? And I think that's, in this package, there's a chart that shows the drop-off, which is pretty dramatic. And then it shows the wish list and what we could, now, the chart that I think throws us off track is the one you referenced earlier today, that existing and projected tax impact. Now, it makes it look as if there's going to be a big tax increase. Now, I don't believe that's the case. I believe it's the tax impact is compared to doing nothing. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but hypothetically, if all we did was keep spending $9 million a year on forever on debt service, what would the tax impact be? For purposes of this exercise, it would be, in my mind, it would be zero. I think this chart would say that it's however much we spend in taxes to support the $9 million that we're already supporting. And I think that's a critical distinction from terms of the optics.
Yeah, but I don't think we ever had that as a goal, but we could have that as something we could do.
It provides excellent perspective.
Yeah.
So at a minimum, I think we should have, in addition to the tax impact chart, there should be a second one that is incremental tax impact, which will show that to some extent the impact will be, and this one is going to really make people think their taxes are going to go up a lot.
Right, and that's...
And they're not. When they may go up for other reasons, but not because
If we
of
do
this.
everything that we say we're going to do, the taxes are going to go up.
A little bit.
No, they're going to go up by the incremental here, if you look at the incremental from one to the other. And that's...
But that's because since 2010, the debt service has dropped off a little, which is why I was using $9 million
but
a year.
the issue is, we've had a balanced budget. As the debt service has been dropping off, we've come forward with a balanced operating budget, which means that what we've gained on a decreasing amount of debt service, we've used in other areas.
Right.
So the assumption in my mind is that we're not going to change the operating areas significantly. So therefore, even though we've shown a decline, that money's been used somewhere else. So what we've basically done is use the money in other places as opposed to the infrastructure. The infrastructure is coming due, and that's the list here. And therefore, I wouldn't want anybody to think that there wouldn't be no tax increase, no matter how you manipulate these numbers. The issue here, if you want to look at this chart, is look at the differential, and that gives you an idea of how much it's going to go up.
Exactly. The incremental is what's key.
That's right.
Because you're never going to be using zero as your base.
No, that's why
You're no longer going to be using $9 million because it's dropped off to about 7.
The way you want to look at these charts, Bruce, is to look at where you are and then where it's going and then the differential.
Right. And this tax impact chart does not do that.
Right. One of the things, I think what...
I can read that off that very easily. I'd say,
Well,
I'm
I
going
think it
here,
goes
and it's going to
back-
go to here. And the differential is what you're talking about.
If you do everything.
But the absolute amount is not right.
See, one of the things that this is pointing out is the benefit of doing this, because I think what we're kind of getting into is what do we want to do? Because if we want to, for example, Bruce, if we did hold it at $9 million, that would put a limitation on what you could do, et cetera. And I don't think this committee is in a position to make those kind of decisions. But I think presenting it to the Board of Selectmen, so you say, okay, here's what it looks like. What do you not want to do?
It provides a framework.
Yeah,
And admittedly, $9 million is not 9 anymore. Now it's down to about 7.
Yeah, but it's going to. But if we do what we're talking about doing, and that's the key, is I think that what we've assembled with a lot of input from a lot of people is here are the things we need to do and when we need to do them. Now the question after this becomes, to me, there's a couple of obvious things that stare you right in the eye. Number one, if we a few years ago, 3 years ago, maybe if we'd have looked at developing a reserve fund then and started putting money away, we could have mitigated some piece of what we're looking at now. Instead, we balanced the budget by not doing that. And so we've used the money for other purposes. Not saying we had any choice, just saying that's what happened. The issue here, though, is there needs to be obviously, even if no matter what we do with the numbers, it's obvious that we need to do some smoothing. Can't do everything at once, but even if you look out here, what this tells you, you can only smooth so far. You're still looking at a pretty healthy increase in debt service.
I think one of the things that worries me to some extent is if the public gets a hold of this without all the discussion and with all the background, they're going to be.
Right.
This is a work in progress. Right?
I know, but it's hard for the press
At a minimum,
to interpret it that
At a
way.
minimum, I think there should be a second version of that chart that is incremental and not absolute.
Are you following that, Cinder? Is that possible?
I didn't hear everything, but I watched the video of the chart. I did think I wrote enough to weigh in a little bit. One of the comments was that, well, a couple comments. One is I'm looking at, the first chart that you gave me was inside 2.5 and on top of 2.5. So I kind of distinguish that. I'm looking at the existing 2.5 chart because that's on top of what your constraint is. Although I think in the last year or two, you've left running out of the table out of the lower one, it's doing at 2.5. So, a lot of the discussion comes around on, I'll just throw out a couple of things. I wonder, how much cash we've been spending in the aggregate on capital as opposed to perhaps putting that away to mitigate impact of debt. The other thing is you left money on the table under the lower level limit, which I know that there's reasons to do that, but at the same time, whether or not you could just tax some of that and set that aside for a debt stabilization fund of some sort. So, and I couldn't hear much more, but I am focused on the chart on page 3 of which is showing just the debt exclusions, because that's where the impact is going to hit the most, rather than inside the budget. As it declines inside, what you've got inside the lower levy limit is falling off, and it's nominal. So if you just look at where you can tax extra, there is an impact on that, and that's on page 3 here, and it's still much more of an impact. But I think that the key is whether or not you're willing to, it goes back to whether or not you're willing to raise rates sooner than you need to. It's a question also whether or not you're willing to raise some taxes sooner than you might need to set aside to mitigate debt service.
Well, there's a lot of options. John has a question.
Well, I want to follow up to, I think Bruce makes a good point, because I think from a point of view of really understanding what we're all interested in is the incremental increase, not, and I think, so he's asked for a chart that would show the incremental change, and I think that's a good idea. I don't want to lose that.
Right.
Because I think
rather than having someone have to do the subtraction.
Well, this chart's okay, yeah, right. but I think what's really of interest to all of us is the incremental change that we're looking at, and I think that was an excellent point.
Did you get that, Cinder?
And adding in a couple years from the past.
What you'd like to see on an incremental change chart, we're happy to do it and to discuss after we do it.
Yeah, I think what we're saying is. Yeah, we can talk some more about it, but I think basically what John is saying is just the incremental change, not what it was before and how much it's going to go up. And that way it's sort of very clear that it's not what I thought it was. In other words, my mistake would be probably made by a lot of people, and they thought, oh my gosh, it's really going up. But the incremental is not that.
That's the difference.
Yeah. So that would be one. Peter has a question?
I don't have a question, I have an observation for later.
Yeah, I think we're skipping around on you. Yes, general fund.
I have an observation, but it could be until after we're done.
Okay, so just the middle, not the existing.
Yes, exactly. That would that would be the incremental. Yes. Toby?
And I just wanted to add in, if we, add in the past, you go back to 2010, 2009, you get to see the whole picture as well, so it makes more of a context for the taxpayer.
Good point. Go back to 2010 on that as well.
And then maybe if you, separate it out into, the $1.3 million assessed value and the, the 500,000, or maybe add in another bracket. So that way, we can kind of get the whole range of tax rates, kind of the low income, medium income, high income. And so people can very simply see what the incremental effect is for them. And anybody can look at it, and they don't have to interpret the chart. Because when this comes before the board, that's when it's really going to get into the public. So we need to be on our game.
Yes. Right.
Too hasty.
Peter, did you want to make your comment?
Yeah. Let me just give you, my usual big picture kind of perspective on this as the intelligent taxpayer willing to be persuaded by numbers. And you were dismissing the last chart at the end of the deck, the combined enterprise fund, which basically is a picture of existing debt, which is around $8 million, and then projected debt, which is twice as big, okay?
For the enterprise funds.
For the enterprise funds. And if you imagine a picture like that for the enterprise funds and then for all of the debt, what I'm looking at with the existing debt is the remnant of debt for infrastructure that served the Nantucket that we knew for the last 10, 20 years, okay? The Nantucket where people would buy a house for $500,000 and say, well, what's the tax impact on a typical homeowner at $500,000? Well, there are no $500,000 houses anymore. We now talk about a $1.3 million house. When you talk about twice as much projected debt, what you're looking at is a picture of a community that is saying, we want to have an orderly investment in infrastructure to serve a community that we envision over the next 20 years. Twice as much debt. And when you look at the components of the debt in terms of the enterprise fund, a whole lot of it is for a sewer. And you say, well, the sewer is not just the sewer, it's the harbor. It's taking a community and saying this is not frozen in time, but it is advancing in a secular sense, that communities like Nantucket, with the expectations that we have today, expect something different than what they expected 20 years ago, and will expect something different 10 years in the future. So, and then you're going to tell me that for what is now my $1.3 million home, not my $500,000 home, that you're going to be tacking on some number of hundreds of dollars on the order of magnitude onto my tax bill going forward to bring about this orderly replacement and upgrading of infrastructure. And as a conservative sort of person, I say, well, what's the problem? I'm just giving you my interpretation. Now, I realize that may be overly optimistic, but when you look at this in terms of the alternative of the community frozen in time, that we should stay at $8 million, or maybe let it edge up to $10 million, but don't go too much more, what you're doing is you're laying that percentage onto a community of the past rather than the one that you foresee going forward, with an increase in scale, more people, an increase in secular expectations, a better high school, I should say a better public school system, a more modernized fire department, et cetera, et cetera. All you're doing is you're moving into the future in what I would say is an orderly fashion. And the only criterion that I would use would be to say, does it look like you're living beyond your means? And that would be a legitimate question, and I don't have the answer to it yet, but I suspect the answer is no. So that's my 2 cents worth.
I love the orderly, because I think that's really a key thing, that if we could do this in an orderly fashion, the impact is going to be incremental. But the time is now.
What I'm saying is that there is an unwarranted appearance of disorderliness that creeps into this if you don't standardize the numbers on what we had versus what we have today versus what we envision for the future. And I'm talking about time periods of 15 years before, 15 years centered on today, and 15 years into the future. So that's what a sewer is about. That's a long-term investment. That's not just tomorrow.
I wonder what they paid 100 years ago when they first put the sewer in. was probably a scary proposition to the taxpayers then. John?
Yeah, and I don't argue with what you're saying per se, except that it's, as you said, it's very big pictures, maybe 200,000 miles in the air, you know what I mean?
Right.
When you come closer to the Earth, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to say, what we're trying to do here is say, what does it look like in the future? And how can we deal with it so that it's not a random type of reaction, but it becomes more of a planned experience. Taxes are going to go up. Anybody who can't see that is got to.
Taxes and fees.
Yeah, taxes and fees are going to go up. The question is, how much, and are we doing it in the best way? And are we anticipating enough so we can mitigate some of it, and so forth? And I think, because that's what, if I'm a taxpayer, what I want to know is, it's not that the taxes that are going up is a problem, because I assume at some point in time they will go up. What's a problem is if I don't have any confidence in the way the town is managing the process, okay? And that's what we're into here, is developing a process that is planful, hopefully, and that can give us decision-making opportunities in advance of the problem. I think that.
Great. Well, my response is what I've given you, I think, is the outline of the executive summary. And I'm not the one to fill in the chapters.
Is there any questions from the audience? I thank you all for being here. I hope.
I get just one more,
guys.
back to you, John, and to you, Peter. There's kind of a balance in between, at the point we are now, is we can take advantage of these interest rates. We can kind of prepare for the future, but we also don't exactly know. So we don't want to be overly ambitious with what we're doing. We want to kind of hit it just at the sweet spot, and that's what all this planning is about, is saying, well, we have, we're looking at a lot, maybe are there things we can do to smooth that out, to kind of mitigate that a little bit, to give us some breathing room in the future, or when we hit the next little recession or the bump in the economy and we're not scrambling. If we look out and see that whole picture and kind of combine your two perspectives, I think we'll be operating very well.
There's probably some absolutes that have to be done.
Right.
And then maybe some others that can be pushed out a little bit. And then there's the way of smoothing with bands, et cetera, et cetera. So there's just an enormous amount of options here. But if we could just get it out on the table, we'll be in a much better position or the Board of Selectmen will be in a much better position to make those kind of decisions. Cinder, we appreciate you and Lisa and all the work that you have done. This is very beneficial and enlightening to us. And we look forward to getting back to you and having more discussions. Libby, do you have anything else to add? I think we're all worn out.
I'm just hoping that maybe somebody could call me later on today or tomorrow and just, we could just have another conversation.
Sum up, yes.
We will make changes that we think we were asked to make today, and I hope it just when we must do all this. This is an iterative process. From my perspective, it was really valuable to hear the town's reaction to what they're feeling. I think there's a lot of work that can be done and that should be done to help you get where you want to go. But I just remind you, it's an iterative process, and we can help you get there. But it's a step-by-step, and it does involve looking at the policies and what you are not doing to do in terms of setting aside reserves and things like that.
Well, you can be very helpful in making suggestions. Okay. Libby will give you a call very soon.
Okay, good. I'll be in the office in the next hour.
Okay. Then I think I'm going to, very soon, Libby, next hour. Well, she made me, I'll let you work it out, Libby, okay?
I'm here for the rest of the day after that.
Rick?
Is the possibilities of a new school in these
Yes.
numbers?
Yes.
Where I didn't see.
I think it's next year, 15?
17 million.
17?
17 million.
17 million, okay.
Oh, Michael might have a comment on that.
Well, I'd be interested in how that 17 million figure was arrived at. I think it's, yeah. I just want to caution people that
Yeah, okay.
Can you do it for less? That'd be great.
Because we had to put a number in, we didn't have a number.
And we didn't want to pin you down.
I understand that. I just want to, I don't want to sit here and then later give you another figure that is going to, blow that out of the water and have somebody say, Mike, why didn't you say something?
No, we knew.
Very aware that it was just a placeholder, but we needed something
Yep.
to make the numbers work.
No, you never gave it to us, so your feet are not held to any fire. It's us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
But also don't think that that's that you can go higher. Try to.
This isn't about what Mike thinks.
Right. No, I understand. I'm just
about
trying
the
to.
architects, but I do think that we have an opportunity to assume that they will give you a better ballpark of what we're hearing.
Great.
Thank you. Before this committee adjourns, John?
just a point, when most of the people in this room came before us with their projects and so forth, we repeated several times that we understood that your numbers would be, depending on what stage you were in the process of planning, the numbers might be very blue skyish, and they might be fairly good, depending on where you were. We also said that your numbers are better than ours. If you don't give us a number, we'll have to use a number. And we'll use our numbers, but we would much prefer, and I don't think people should feel, somehow we've got to get by this process of when we do the planning that people are concerned, and I know because if the public gets a hold of a number, then they run with it, and then that can really screw you up. So somehow we've got to figure out how we can get your best estimates in here without people feeling that you're going to be held accountable for that number at that time. And I know that's a problem, but we've got to figure that because.
Well, this is the first time we've ever even asked you for that information.
This is an issue, and we want your numbers, even though they're preliminary, because they're better than our numbers. You know what I mean? And so, but I don't think anybody here is going to hang you on your number or any number that you give us. We recognize it's a work in process.
And I only raise it not for the purposes of blame of a number to anyone. It's for your planning purposes. I know you need a solid number, and so I think we're close to presenting that.
And I think this process kind of feeds into the policy process where the Board of Selectmen are presenting to the town saying, well, within the context of everything we've looked at, we've had our committees look at everything, and now you can see what forget about the $15 million for the school. This is what you're actually going to pay. This is your actual increase for everything all included, not just the school.
It's the aggregate.
It's the aggregate.
Well, projection.
Projection, yeah. Any other comments before I try to get through the agenda? Okay. I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of our meeting on December 4th. Catching up.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Our next meeting, I guess, as far as I know, the next meeting will be June 25th, but there's going to be a lot of action in between. Okay? The next item is adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you all. At the BOS meeting at 6 o'clock. Yeah, I personally.
What, 6 p.m.?
It's the, I don't know where they are on the agenda, but.
Okay, so it's the BOS.
Yeah.
You want to hang into it?
I think you're right.